The agricultural community is also still concerned, worrying about the long-term impacts of tariffs. More than 20% of farm income comes from exports.
So farmers in more major agricultural states like Ohio are facing billions in potential losses as China.
This summer, as tariffs climb and deals stall, a quiet crisis is unfolding across America's heartland. It's not just an economic story, it's a human one. From the soybean fields of Iowa to the corn rows of Missouri, farmers who once fed the world are now fighting to survive. And for many, the trade war with China didn't just raise prices, it upended everything they knew. This is how America's farmers became collateral damage in a global economic fight.
Down.
Now, international tariffs are especially hurting soybean farmers like Andrew Beeman. At least half of the U.S. production of soybeans are exported, and their biggest buyer is China.
In April 2025, the Trump administration raised tariffs on Chinese goods. Some items now face duties as high as 145%. China responded with tariffs up to 125% on U.S. agricultural exports, striking directly at the heart of the farm economy. No crop felt the blow more than soybeans. In 2024, the U.S. exported $12.8 billion worth of soybeans to China, making it the single largest U.S. agricultural export by value, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But with combined tariffs now reaching 135 to 145%, that flow has slowed to a near halt. For many farmers, this isn't just a temporary slowdown, it's a collapse. Millions of bushels now sit unsold in silos across the Midwest, waiting for markets that may never reopen. Meanwhile, China has moved on. Brazil now provides over 70% of China's soybean imports, while the U.S. share has fallen below 25% based on March 2025 data. Once the world's leading supplier, America is losing ground, and fast. The consequences are visible. In Iowa and Ohio, storage bins are full. Grain prices have plummeted. Some producers have deferred maintenance or cut fertilizer use. Others are waiting and hoping, stuck between uncertainty and survival. And this happened fast. The shockwaves hit within weeks, not months. What was once a predictable trade partnership has now become a financial trap, tightening by the day.
Breakthrough soon, farmers say they fear they're going to be caught, right in the middle of this standoff between China.
Across the Midwest, decisions that would normally take months were made overnight. Many farmers sold soybeans straight from the field, even at lower prices just to move product. Others changed their crop plans entirely, switching from soybeans to corn or wheat, hoping to ride out the storm with crops that don't rely so heavily on exports to China. It's not ideal. Corn offers thinner margins. But when the alternative is unsold soybeans, the choice is clear. These individual decisions are stacking up and reshaping entire farm economies. More than half of U.S. soybean production is historically destined for foreign buyers, with China taking the lion's share. Losing that customer disrupts not only planting patterns but every business connected to the land. Feed stores are seeing fewer bulk orders. Equipment dealers report drops in sales. Fertilizer and seed suppliers are scaling back inventory. In many towns, the ag economy isn't just part of the community, it is the community. In places like Iowa, a single bad year echoes across school budgets, tax bases, and main streets. What used to be routine business decisions, when to buy, when to hire, are now questions of survival. And what makes it harder is this. The damage isn't driven by weather, pests, or drought. It's being driven by policy. Farmers are used to risk. But this time, it's not nature they're battling. It's Washington. And the uncertainty is worse than any forecast. It doesn't just cloud the outlook, it paralyzes it. Yet the pain spreading through rural America doesn't stop at falling prices or unsold crops. Beneath the surface, deeper cracks are emerging, ones tied to labor shortages, global trust, and a food system stretched to its limits. And for the communities that depend on agriculture, the hardest part may be what comes next.
Now, as you might imagine, many U.S. farmers are worried at this moment about losing their biggest export market.
And it's like, well, we don't have alternative markets for those corn, soybean, wheat, all the stuff that we grow.
Previously, we saw how the trade war left U.S. farmers stranded. Now, we turn to what's behind the scenes, and what may be lost for good if this conflict continues.
Tonight, many of America's farmers already feeling the pinch are worried about the possibility of more challenges. That's because President Trump is threatening to deport millions of undocumented immigrants, creating uncertainty about the future of the workforce.
Farming isn't just soil and seed, it's people. And in America, more than 42% of farm laborers are undocumented immigrants, according to 2022 data from the USDA. President Trump's renewed push in 2025 to deport millions of undocumented workers has triggered deep fears across agricultural regions. In Wisconsin's dairy belt, over half the labor force is undocumented. On a 900-acre farm in the town of Wandy, nearly 90% of the work is done by migrants. Without them, production halts. Cows go unmilked. Livestock unfed. One farm owner estimated that replacing his immigrant laborers with American-born workers at legally required wages would cost upwards of $100,000 per employee per year. He said plainly, his farm wouldn't survive 6 months. This is not theoretical. Across New Jersey, Texas, and California, farms are bracing for labor shortages that could wipe out their ability to harvest crops at scale. And if crops stay in the field, they don't make it to market, which means prices may rise for consumers, even as farmers make less. For perishable goods, the risk is even greater. Missing a harvest window by a few days can mean losing an entire year's income.
They could cause some price problems for us, with Mexico being the importer of corn and China with some imports of soybeans.
Well, I think all he's doing is trying to scare them straight, so to speak.
The fallout doesn't stop with soybeans. In Kansas, sorghum, also known as milo, once had a guaranteed buyer through U.S. international food aid programs. But with Trump's administration cutting global aid, those programs have gone dark. Now, co-ops are sitting on 1.7 million bushels of unsold milo. It spoils slowly in storage, while farmers lose money with every passing day. In Georgia, one nonprofit that produces high-nutrient peanut paste for famine zones saw its federal contracts canceled, reinstated, and canceled again within weeks. With 130 employees and supply chains tied to 27 states, the disruption affects everything from milk producers in Michigan to sugar refiners in Louisiana. These aren't isolated incidents. They're links in a fragile chain. And when that chain breaks, so do rural economies. Soybeans are more than just a crop. They're a geopolitical tool, one that once gave America leverage in trade negotiations, especially with China. But today, that leverage is slipping. Brazil's dominance in global soybean exports has only grown, while U.S. exporters watch contracts dry up. According to the USDA's March 2025 update, China's purchases of U.S. soybeans are down to 22.1 million tons, the lowest in 12 years. Even if a new trade deal is signed, there's no guarantee those markets will return. Because once trust is broken and supply chains rebuilt, buyers don't always come back. China has now invested heavily in long-term contracts with Brazil and expanded port infrastructure to support year-round supply. That's not easily undone. That's the risk now facing the U.S. farm economy. Not just short-term pain, but long-term displacement. A permanent shift in who feeds the world and who no longer can. This is more than a trade war. It's a turning point. The decisions made in Washington on tariffs, labor, and aid are not just numbers on paper. They are shaping the lives of farmers who rise at dawn, who plant with hope, and who harvest in uncertainty. They're shaping towns built around the rhythm of the growing season. And they're reshaping America's role in feeding a hungry world. As we look ahead, the question isn't just whether Trump's policies will deliver better trade terms. It's whether the country can rebuild what's already been lost. Because for many on the front lines of American agriculture, the damage is no longer hypothetical. It's already here.
The Port of Los Angeles, for example, saw its cargo volume last week drop around 35% compared to the Beijing.
President Xi meeting with senior leaders from about 30 countries across Latin America and the Caribbean.
A 35% crash in America's busiest port. Retail inventories thinning fast across the country. These were the ripple effects of Trump's 145% tariff shock and China's countermeasures. Now, under economic pressure, the U.S. has agreed to a 90-day rollback. Tariffs are down. Trade is resuming. But behind the handshake, one question looms. Is Beijing quietly taking the lead? And is America falling behind? In this video, we unpack what triggered the deal, how global players are reacting, and what it could mean for the future of U.S. power. President Trump's decision to lower tariffs from 145% to 30% wasn't driven by strength. It was driven by economic pressure. The Port of Los Angeles reported a 35% drop in cargo volume compared to a year earlier. Seattle and Tacoma anticipated an 8 to 15% decline. For dock workers, this translated into fewer hours and job insecurity. Port officials described the situation as chaotic, with difficulty planning labor and operations. Retailers, meanwhile, faced thinning inventories, with many estimating only 5 to 7 weeks of stock remaining. This rollback wasn't a strategic maneuver. It was a short-term response to mounting logistical and political costs.
The two signed several agreements, essentially allowing China to invest more there in order to buy more products from Brazil.
While U.S. companies rushed to capitalize on the tariff reprieve, China moved in a different direction. President Xi hosted leaders from 30 Latin American and Caribbean countries in Beijing, signing agreements in infrastructure, mining, and AI cooperation. Chinese private firms pledged billions in new investments. Beijing also secured a 157 billion yuan currency swap with Brazil, reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar. While the U.S. stockpiled goods, China was building new trade pathways and financial instruments. Rather than reacting, China used the moment to expand its global position, especially in regions the U.S. once considered within its sphere of influence. Trump's 145% tariff led to a rapid collapse in trans-Pacific trade flows. Maersk North America reported a 30 to 40% drop in shipments from China. Many importers halted orders entirely, uncertain how to price or move goods. Some businesses rerouted products through Canada to avoid high tariffs, trucking them overland once the rollback was announced. Economists warned of upcoming consumer price increases, especially for seasonal goods. Logistics costs surged, and shipping lanes were destabilized. Meanwhile, Brazil expanded agricultural exports to China, and electronics producers in Southeast Asia stepped in to replace US-based suppliers. Rather than a temporary disruption, this marked a longer-term diversification away from American trade routes.
So it's a common sense that Trump will not get to where he wants to. So he talked about a reset the relationship, but I believe he actually...
Yes, a deal was signed. But Chinese analysts and officials quickly framed it as a concession, not a compromise. Zhou Bo, a retired PLA colonel, called it a first-round win for China, saying the rollback came from U.S. weakness, not mutual agreement. Chinese state media doubled down on this interpretation, stating attempts to isolate China were futile. China, now the largest trading partner for over 140 countries, views itself as indispensable to the global economy. As one commentator put it, trying to isolate China is like trying to isolate the world. The U.S., meanwhile, shifted from maximum pressure to reluctant de-escalation, without securing major concessions in return. Beyond the headlines, this episode reflects a deeper credibility gap for the U.S. retailers, say planning has become near impossible. Port officials struggle to manage staffing under volatile volumes. According to interviews from the Port of LA, only 8 container ships docked recently, down from 10 to 12. Hundreds of dock workers waited for jobs that never came. Even as tariffs eased, businesses warned the damage had been done. Short-term relief doesn't undo long-term uncertainty. While China expands trade networks and reduces dependency on the U.S., America finds itself reactive, not proactive. The tariff war didn't break China. It exposed fractures at home. So after all the tariffs, disruptions, and political theater, where does this leave us? The U.S. pressed pause, but China pushed forward. While American businesses scramble for clarity, Beijing is locking in trade routes, alliances, and influence. This wasn't just a 90-day truce. It may be a glimpse into a new economic order, one where the U.S. no longer sets the terms. What do you think? Is America still leading or quietly stepping back? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. We'll be watching, and we'll keep breaking it down for you.